Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Welcome to The Blue Dot podcast, where we shine a light on voices shaping our future. As most of our listeners know, Mitch McConnell's seat is up for grabs, and the Democrats have a superb bench of patriots standing up to take that seat, and we're here to give them a platform.
That's right, Natalie. And today we're joined by Logan Forsythe, a former special agent with the United States Secret Service and now an attorney fighting for families here in Kentucky. Logan is running for McConnell's U.S. Senate seat. And Logan, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie and Brian. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really happy to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I've been looking so forward to hearing from you because you have such a fascinating journey. You grew up in Lyon County, Kentucky, and if I'm correct, that's close to Paducah, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, right down the road, about 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah, and you, as a kid, you faced homelessness. You found your way to college, you're a first-generation college graduate, and then you became a lawyer, joined the Secret Service, and later shifted from protecting presidents to advocating for working families. So I'd love it if you could just share a little bit about what inspired you to make that leap into politics.
Yeah, it's not just one thing. And I guess if I wanted to summarize it completely, like the most brutally honest answer I can give you is this looming sense of dread that I've been having for the future. You know, I have two kids. I have a son, Maddox, he's 13. My daughter, Maggie, she turns 10 in just a few days now. And I honestly believe right now, if we don't get different people in office, if we don't start advocating for working people and the most vulnerable, then my kids are going to inherit a much worse world than what I got. And I started from nothing. You know, we talked about it, and it wasn't my beginnings and where I started from. It wasn't for lack of effort. On my mother's half, she was a single mom. She worked, 2 full-time jobs, sometimes had a third part-time job. And she worked 100 hours a week minimum. And minimum wage is so low in Kentucky. The opportunities in the rural parts of the state where I grew up just weren't great enough for her to, be able to pay bills despite working 100 hours a week. And, I'm not quite 40. I'm getting there. And it seems like so long ago, my childhood. And I remember, because my mom told me this when I was a kid, that if I went to college somehow, because she didn't get to go, so she didn't know how that worked. But she said, if you can figure this out, she told me and my siblings this. She said, you can do anything with your life. You can overcome your circumstances. You can become whatever you want to be. And I believed that. Nowadays, you talk to college students, you talk to someone like my son, a young teenager, whenever they use the term the American dream, it's sarcastic. Yeah. They don't believe in it anymore. And I don't blame them. We look at the cost of everything. Like college when I went was almost unattainably expensive. It wasn't affordable at all. And now it's even worse. And I am now running for that reason and for many other reasons. I think that we have consistently been going in the wrong direction. It's been harder and harder for working class people and families to get ahead. And I feel like if we don't get better people in office. And when I say better people, I just mean average people who have lived in our economy, who have grown up in the rural parts of the country and of Kentucky, who are oftentimes overlooked, but have to survive in a system that is usually made up of people who don't represent them because people from there don't get that opportunity. And that's who I think we need if we really want to see change. And that's hopefully what, I bring to the table.
Yeah, I think by better people, just more suitable, as you said, people who have lived the experience that have struggled with some of the things that really need to be fixed. You know, and here on the Blue Dot, we like to tackle those kitchen table topics that affect those in the bluegrass and beyond. And as you mentioned on your candidate website and just in your discussion here, I mean, these fundamental needs that we all share, like access to healthy, affordable food, good paying jobs, healthcare, quality education. I mean, they're all under threat right now from the current administration, those currently leading our nation. All these topics are a lot to cover, but can you tell us which ones really rise to the top for you and would be the central issues that you would intend to focus on should you be elected?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think the biggest thing is the made up term that we're all using right now, affordability, which I don't know if you heard that Trump claimed that that's a made up word. But yeah, I guess we made it up and we've coined it for this. Yeah. And I think we're going to...
It's made up to him.
It's made up
like, I've never heard of that.
If you're born into a billionaire household and that's all you've ever known, then yeah, maybe you've never had to even worry about what the term affordable means. But that's not anyone else's reality. But that's the biggest issue. And that's such a vague umbrella term. I'm not going to just leave it there, but that encompasses so many things. So wages, I talked about the fact that my mom worked at least 100 hours a week growing up, every every week. She didn't get paid sick time. She didn't get paid holidays. She had minimum wage jobs, and had minimum wage actually kept up with inflation at that time, or even today, if it was still doing it, someone who is a single mother wouldn't necessarily have to work 100 hours a week to still not get by. So the first and
Hmm.
foremost, I think that we have to have people in there who and I don't know how this is a controversial thing. I guess that I'm so extreme that I don't see it anymore. But I think paying a living wage is just common sense. You want people to be able to afford to live in the society that you want them to be workers in, and you want them to pay for things. If they can't afford to live there, then you're eventually going to crumble. Like, I'm not an economist. I took basic econ during my biology degree in undergrad at UK, but I didn't go further than that class. But I do understand that if the majority of people can't live and pay for their way in a society, that's going to fail eventually. And that's where we're at. So first and foremost, my ideal of what a living wage is I believe anybody who works a job, full-time job, should be able to pay for all of their bills and living expenses in whatever city and whatever state that they are working in. So it's not just like, hey, $15 an hour is going to cover it, because that doesn't cover it in some cities. And when I say that you should be able to pay your expenses, I firmly believe that just like we had, 60, 70 years ago, even one person working should be able to pay for their family. And then if you have two people working in a house, that's even better. Now you have a family who can save money, a family who can go on vacations, a family who can enjoy life. Like, we're here for such a limited time. Like, why do we want to gatekeep and make sure that just the basic nice parts of life are just out of reach for so many people? To me, what's the point? And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess, like, again, this is me being radical, right? So many people are like, oh, you're a socialist. No, I just think that if you have two people working 40 hours a week, then they should be able to take their kids down to a beach once a year and shouldn't have to
Well,
put that on a credit card. I mean,
and
that's,
yeah, and that point you make right there is what we've talked about before. It's if you give people a living wage and they can pay their bills and they have some extra, they become consumers. And that grows.
yes.
That's that growth that everybody's looking for. They forget about that other piece of it. If you have money, you spend it,
Yeah.
and that helps everyone.
Yeah. And the money's there. And this is what
Hmm.
people are so blind and I think willfully ignorant to, the ones who go on TV, these, news anchors who make, millions of dollars a year, who tell us that we're wrong for having this opinion. This is dangerous. They glance over the fact that even in COVID, when everything was artificially like inflated and the markets were adjusted, Amazon made record profits. Walmart
Hmm.
makes record profits. All of these companies that we all shop at and rely on, they year over year make record revenue amounts, while people make less and less, per average, I guess, when inflation is taken into it. So the individual families who work are worse off every day, where the ultra wealthy amongst us are better off. And I
Hmm.
don't agree. I don't think, Elon Musk is maybe about to be the first trillionaire in the world is what we're looking at. And I think that that's crazy. And that's just, I'm like, why do you need $1 trillion? And most of that money comes from government contracts. Like, there's so many things. And I said, this is such an umbrella term. And there's so many ways that we can tackle the affordability crisis. Obviously, wages is one of them. Another one, right out of law school, I started in the Department of Defense first before I was a Secret Service agent. And I was an attorney. I did some intelligence work there too. And part of my attorney work was government contracting. I had to oversee government contracts. So there was a big book of laws about this thick. It's called the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. These are all of the laws and rules in which the federal government has to follow when they buy anything, when they contract for anything, whether it's a good or service. The system is so broken that it wasn't my department, thank goodness, because I mainly worked on weapon systems. But the other ones who were stocking basic, like, Air Force bases, because I was with the Air Force, it was such a broken system that we were seeing contracts where we were paying the government $200 per roll of toilet paper. And that's under presidents of different parties. It wasn't just one party came in and changed it and made all these small businesses wealthy. No, the money is there to fix people's lives and to help them out, and not necessarily give out handouts, but to make everything actually easier and better and make people thrive in where they are, whether that's working at McDonald's, whether that's being an attorney, whether that's hosting a podcast. The resources are there if we just use them in a smarter way, and we don't allow a small group of billionaires to just accumulate more and more and more, which is what we're doing. Then we can really tackle the affordability crises that we have right now in the short term and the long term. And we're not even going to have to really raise taxes in terms of how the government investment into these programs look. We just have to be smarter with the money that we already have. We're literally burning money. The Pentagon can't account for trillions of dollars over the past 10 years. It's insane. We need to get people in office who will actually read a freaking book that's in front of them, or, do an audit and see where the money's going and say, this is wrong. Let's fix this. That's what I'm promising to be for people. I will be annoying about it. I'm not gonna lie, I'll be very thorough, very annoying. But I think that we need that. We need somebody who actually cares, someone who overcame, very hard times and who understands what the government can do if used the right way.
Yeah, and one thing I think a lot of what you're talking about is coming from a place of experience, right? You have such a dynamic background, and I wanted to let you have a chance to talk a little bit about that. Like I said in the beginning, you came from homelessness. You just spoke about being a part of the Department of Defense. I mean, there's so many things. So, do you want to just kind of walk everybody through your journey, because I think it's really shaped your views on how you can help people once you become part of the Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said earlier, I'm from Lyon County, which is far western Kentucky. It's a rural part of the state. We grew up, my father left when I was about 3 years old. My mother then had to raise 4 kids on her own. She was a stay-at-home mom, actually. And my dad made really good money. So she was kind of, completely in a new circumstance and situation overnight. And she could either give up or try her best. And she tried her best. And she's a great example, one of my favorite people. She's a perfect role model for me and my kids. I'm very thankful that I had her and I could kind of see what hard work looked like. And just watching her never give up is the reason why I'm here with you today and why I never give up. I was terrified growing up, always being in poverty. I had the wherewithal enough to know how little we had. A lot of kids don't have that, and some of my siblings even admitted that there were times they didn't kind of realize until, we lost our house or something, that, oh, this is bad. And maybe it's because I'm the youngest of four, so I could learn from their wisdom that they finally got on. But the fear of this is a real possibility for somebody. If you don't do certain things, if you don't do everything just right, you can end up just struggling completely. And with that, that motivated me to go to college. Like I said, for my siblings and I, we all eventually went, and all four of us escaped poverty, which is kind of unheard of statistically. We got very lucky. Again, I attribute that to my mother's influence on all of us. And when I got to college, I studied biology at the University of Kentucky. I was going to be a doctor. And I met my wife, Brittany. She's a school teacher, and she has been for, way too long now, 15, 16 years. I met her the day after I graduated high school, and we both worked at a 4-H summer camp, and we had training that weekend. So I graduated on a Friday, met her Saturday. And it was funny. I was a very shy, nervous little guy back in the day. And she was just so beautiful to me. We walked into training and I saw her and I kept trying to be cool. I was just trying to wink at her and stuff. It was awful. And she was just ignoring me. And so I called my mom that night. I didn't even know Brittany's name, wouldn't even talk to her, terrified of her in person. And I told my mom, I go, hey, I just saw the girl I'm going to marry. And she's like, what's her name? I was like, I'll tell you tomorrow because I don't know. I haven't met her yet, but I've just seen her. So from that point on, I tricked her, into getting with me and then marrying me. We got married at the ripe old age of 20.
Oh, wow.
And we've been, together since we were 18, married since 20. And in college, we found out through poor planning. And it's funny, I have a biology degree, so I should have known how it happened. But we got pregnant. And I was like, oh, no, what's happening here? So, immediately, I was like, well, if I go to medical school, which was the plan, I wanted to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. You have 4 years of medical school. You have a 7-year or so residency or internship for that. And then you have another 4 years after. And then after all that time, you can make more than $50,000. And I was, my whole life up to that point, I'm terrified of, being poor. And I was about to have a kid. And I was like, I can't do that. I actually took the LSAT last minute. I was fortunate enough that Northern Kentucky University Chase, they offered me a scholarship. So I got to go to law school with my biology degree because you don't have to have prereqs for law school. You can go with any degree. They were actually also, that school was fantastic in so many ways, but they also let me accelerate it. So instead of 3 years, I finished in just over a year and a half because I had a winter intercession term there. Oh. And I was able to get done with school. Then I started with the Department of Defense and started making money so I could take care of my son. who was born. That was my motivation for that. So school is very important to me. Education is a massive thing. I'm a big fan of it, whether that is a traditional education after high school where you go to college or, working with the trades and the unions. I definitely think that we need a stronger union presence throughout all of Kentucky. We have a really great unions everywhere, but where I grew up, I didn't know those jobs were available. So I thought I had to go to college if I wanted to do something. I might have been an electrician today. Who knows if I would have known what was available. So, but yeah, I think that making sure education on whatever level, whatever that looks like for young people, making sure that's available, not only is going to improve people's lives in Kentucky, but it's also, especially with our trades, working with the union halls, working with trades, getting more programs in all public schools. I think that would save a lot of our small towns that are dying. I think a lot of kids would grow up and say, hey, look, I can become a plumber or an electrician. I can stay here and make a good living. And I think that would help with a lot of our problems. And but getting back to my story, sorry, I'm trying to work my platform into this, but I was with the Department of Defense. I did some attorney work, some contract work. So I worked on weapon systems. There's a small fighter plane called the A-29 that we set up Afghanistan's Air Force back in the day with. I worked on the B-2 bomber program, so I was negotiating contracts with, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Embraer, all the big manufacturers of those systems. Also did some intelligence work with them. One day I was there working out before work, and a couple of other civilians came up to me in the gym, and they were like, hey, what do you do? I was like, I'm an attorney, and we were talking. They're like, you're big. I'm like, well, I'm flattered, but I'm married, so I can't. And they're like, no, we're Secret Service agents. They're like, Obama's going to come up here to Wright-Patterson, and they were doing an advance. And they're like, yeah, you should apply. Like, you're a big guy, and you sound smart enough if you're an attorney. I was like, well, they give that degree to anybody, I think, that shows up. And that's how that happened. I had to go through the application process, the background, but then I joined Secret Service and started all the federal service under Obama, protected Trump in his first term. And then, I finished under Biden when he was coming, and we moved back to Kentucky in the end of 2020. So, wow. And and then we were bad car accident a couple of years later, broke my back and my neck. Unable to continue the federal service because most of my right side of the body's numb, and if you can't fill the handgun, they don't want you to hold the handgun, which I completely agree with.
That makes sense.
Yeah, thankfully I still have my law license, so I've been representing Kentucky workers and individuals who have been either hurt on the job or retaliated against or discriminated against. I've been anything workers' rights I've been doing since then.
It's amazing.
That is an amazing story. And it's great. I mean, like you said, thankfully, I had my law degree and I could fall back on that. But actually, I think there's a lot of people that you've probably helped that are thankful that, as unfortunate and scary that was, that turn in your life maybe has benefited a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't be benefited. We probably would not be talking to you today if it weren't for that. So you never know what's going to come from any of life's events.
That's true. Yeah, and it's been fortunate. I love it. It's one of those things where, especially when someone's hurt on the job and you help them make sure they have their benefits and make sure that they have some sort of money coming in through workers' comp. They're not going to lose their house. They're not going to lose their car. And it's just a huge sigh of relief once they realize there are some protections. And it's really cool to be a part of that. It's a really cool thing.
Oh, that's great. And you mentioned the on your website, as we've talked about ad nauseum, the big beautiful bill, and specifically how it's going to affect healthcare. And I know that's one of the platforms and one of the things you discussed specifically. Healthcare access, economic opportunity, as you've kind of talked about with the trades, that we think is so important, and would agree that give people a lot of opportunity that otherwise think college is the only path, and maybe that's not the best path for them. Do you have specific policies that you've thought through or that you've seen that you would like to build upon that would help you address some of these really core issues that are affecting Kentuckians today and are going to probably be increasingly worrisome here in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of talked about the fact that I think the biggest issue affecting Kentuckians and working class people, our wages are grotesquely too small at this point with the federal minimum wage. I think that we reassess that. We calculate, literally based on whatever market people are in. I think that one minimum wage per state is even not good enough because it's cheaper to live in some parts of Kentucky than others. And I think a system as big as our federal government, you have enough resources to get it right and to do it better. So I think we need to calculate what a living wage actually looks like. And I think that, at least for me, for my platform, I would push forth a bill that not only recalculates that, but that is automatically recalculated at the rate of inflation every year. So that if Congress is incompetent, like we've been seeing a lot, and they're unable to get basic bills passed, this could be an automatic adjustment every year to ensure that people don't fall behind just because we have the wrong people in office. Another thing, I would want to see more investments and more funding from the federal government, take away some of the resources and money that's completely being wasted in our current systems, like our government contracting I talked about, where we grossly overpay for most goods and services to a literal criminal level. It's insane the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that happens that we don't call fraud, waste, and abuse because technically they're following the law. These laws need to be changed. $200 for a roll of toilet paper is insane, but it happens. I would want to reallocate those funds to training. I would want to use, instead of trying to dismantle the Department of Education, I think that the Department of Education and then healthcare, these should be two of our biggest federal expenditures every year in the budget. Obviously, our defense is huge. We have to have that, especially nowadays with the fact that we have an administration that thinks that they can just go into whatever country they want and start wars without congressional approval. We're going to have to be able to protect ourselves for many years going forward. So I'm not saying we have to do away with spending for the Department of Defense, but I thought about this a lot, and I'm clearly not a politician, as you can see. I should have better catchphrases. But growing up, when we were very poor, and when my mom was down to her last few dollars, and she had to pick and choose what her money went to, most of the time it went to her children over herself. She wore shoes with holes in them sometimes, but her kids were fed. And I think that your budget, whether it's billions or trillions of dollars, or whether it's $20 extra that you might have after bills are paid, whatever you choose to spend that money on reflects what you really care about. And I think our country and our government, we're not spending money on things that we actually should care about. We should care about educating our young people and our adults in our communities. It shouldn't just be, children, and then when you're 18, you're on your own. Good luck. We shouldn't allow that to happen. We should make sure that if colleges, universities, institutions of higher education are receiving federal funds, that they're not allowed to increase tuition 20 times the starting rate when a person entered as a freshman. They're graduating as a senior, and college is 5 or 10 times more expensive per academic hour. It's insane how this whole system works. And the student loans need to be reformed. There's so many things that we can do differently in education just like that. But we also need to spend more money throughout all of Kentucky, throughout all of America, to ensure that our public education system not only does like basic core requirements, kids learn math, science, reading, writing, but when they get older, introduce them to the trades, union halls, representatives in there, set up actual shops. And even my school is so small, I didn't even have, a shop. Most places have that. We didn't have that. And I think that that's a huge disservice, and we're hurting our future self. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. We don't realize it because we're too focused on the short term. But there's so many ways to reform education, from the top down, bottom up. And with the affordability thing, our housing crisis right now is an absolute nightmare. I'm fortunate that we were able to purchase our house, and we owned a couple of houses now, my wife and I, and that's not the reality for most people our age, and it might not be the reality for them. And we just got lucky. We got so incredibly lucky that when we bought our first house, the market was awful, and we were able to get a lower down payment loan. And then the markets flipped, and then we made a big profit, and then we could be able to afford our house in Lexington. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to. I know most people can't. So a lot of the issue with that is private equity. We have no restrictions on that. I think that if a house, a single family residence, goes up on the market, I don't think private equity should be able to even try to buy it for 3 to 6 months.
I totally agree with that. That's one of my biggest hot buttons for sure.
Yeah. And we need more through the house, through the HUD. We need more money to come in to, incentivize people. If you can't afford to purchase and build new, because it's prohibitively expensive right now to buy supplies, and we have so many beautiful older homes throughout Kentucky. Let's have a grant program in place that we restore these. We keep some of these smaller towns then from dying, and people get a house out of the deal too, right? And of course, it's still a mortgage thing, but we can have better assistance for those programs. There's a lot of ways that we can adjust the housing to make it fair. And the biggest thing is we have to make sure that most single family residences are owned by single families. We have to get corporations, private equity out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of kind of
That's great.
what you said there comes down to keeping people in their communities as well, right? Making the jobs in your
Right.
communities, keeping people to be able to afford housing in their communities. And I think that really kind of goes to the whole grassroots movement of making things happen in each of our communities, even like you talked about, even the minimum wage being more focus based, which I think is a really cool concept. I also think I'm confident that we're going to win back the House and the Senate in 2026. But even with that,
Yeah.
I think most people across the country want to see more bipartisan to kind of get all of these ideas done. You've worked with leaders from both parties during your time in the Secret Service by protecting them. How do you think you would be prepared to work across the aisle to get a lot of these really good concepts into law?
Yeah. I think the best way to do this is for voters everywhere to vote for people, like me, like other people running who are not politicians who like my promise to everybody is if elected or when elected, I should be more optimistic, right? I'm not a Democratic senator. I'm a senator, and the people I work with, they aren't Democratic, Republican, or Independents. They are senators. They are representatives from wherever they're from. Drop the labels and don't let that be the first thing you think of when you're working with somebody. And just work on issues. Talk about your ideas on how we're going to move stuff forward. Work on compromise. Don't be so quick to build up walls and to keep people out. Now with that being said, and I've told people in private conversation, after we win and we're there, it's going to be hard for me to look some of these people in the eye and want to work with them when they co-drafted and supported that budget bill that they call the big beautiful bill. That's an evil thing that was pushed through. They're literally taking food out of the hands of hungry kids. They are making sure our elderly, are getting kicked out of their homes, their care homes, or getting kicked off of their health insurance. And I don't know how a normal person can do that. And that's going to be very difficult for me to, I guess, throw that out of my mind. But I will do it. I'll be able to. It'll always be there. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to say that I can completely forget. But that will be a very difficult thing. But I think there's so many people running across the country who are tired of the way things have been and who aren't going to go in there with that normal party first mindset. And I think if we get enough people in there, then honestly, I believe the term bipartisan might eventually go away. It's just going to be people getting in there doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Because more people want that than not. That's my promise. And I've unfortunately worked with a bunch of terrible people. And I've gotten my job done every time. And I'm not going to take a job if I'm not going to do my job.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about protecting a president that you didn't necessarily agree with his politics, but you signed up for it, you're committed to doing it and doing it right. And that's what you have to do. And I'm sure, as you said, in Congress, there will be a lot of days when you're facing somebody that has done things that really go against your values, but somehow you have to find that path forward. That's really the key to being successful in any kind of professional situation. I think we've lost a lot of that. Everything's gotten so tribal that you're right. It's the first thing you think of, is this person a Democrat or Republican? Then we go from there. And if we could at least get beyond that, that would be a start.
Yeah, I mean, because look at where we are right now. And this isn't something new. It should be. Like the fact that we are on another continuing resolution that the government shut down and it could shut down again, that shouldn't be acceptable for anybody. Mm-hmm. Their most basic minimal job is to get a budget through, and they just refuse to do it. Like if I imagine, whether it's today, whether it's pick your favorite president, imagine someone's coming at them with a weapon, gun, knife, whatever you choose, and the Secret Service agent says, "You know what? I just don't want to do my job today." Unacceptable. Yeah. You would never be okay. You would never be like, "Oh, they're having a bad day. It's okay." Yeah. They woke up, they're grumpy. So we're going to forgive the fact that this guy's now dead because this guy didn't do his job. No other job is that okay. If I went to court right now and I had a client counting on me and I was like, "Hey, I didn't read your file. Right. Let's just see what happens." No, I would be disbarred. I could go to prison. It's insane that this is the one job that we're like, hey, they haven't done a single thing we sent them there to do. All these programs are shut down. People are starving as a result, but it's okay because, we can't seem to agree on basic things. That's not okay for me.
Yeah.
And the other battle you're going to be facing here is there's quite a few Democratic challengers in the primary. Can you tell us what sets you apart from those other candidates?
This is one of those weird questions because you don't want to be mean or you don't want to like say anything that seems negative because I believe we're all running for the same goals, the same ideals. Most of us have this same end game in mind of what we want the country to be. We might disagree on a few small things, but I just ask people to get to know everyone as much as they can. Look at their websites, their social medias, these interviews they do, and also vote for the person who you think is going to represent you the best. That's it. I was raised in rural Kentucky. I have that. I live in Lexington now. I lived in northern Kentucky. I have good connections and ties throughout the state. I like to think that I have an understanding of what it truly means to be a Kentuckian, what I think could actually move Kentucky forward. Go on my website. People are often surprised. So what I do is once somebody like emails through the website and they're like, hey, I want to get involved. I call those people every time. And they're like, what the heck is this? Like, they can't believe that I'm calling them and I'm talking to them. So if anybody wants to talk to me, that's always an option. You can do that. I don't, I'm very different than a lot of people. I don't call people for money right now, and which is kind of became an issue with some of the consultants and advisors that I had. That's just not who I am. I grew up without money. Yeah, I don't know why you need to raise $100 million to win a race. I refuse to think that that's necessary. It costs $500 to put your name in the ballot. I paid for that out of my own pocket for this. I don't know. I think that the system is broken at the most basic level, including running for office, including campaigning and calling people and begging for money. And I want to change all of that. So if people are interested in that, ask yourself how many texts or calls are you getting from other people wanting your money? That's not who I'm going to be. They tried to do that at first, and I put a stop to all that. I canceled fundraisers and everything last quarter, especially because the holidays were coming up. I'm just not asking people for money right now. So it's just, I know I'll have to at some point, but right now there's not a lot of expenses. So I'm trying not to do that to people because I don't believe in that. I don't think that you should feel like you have to pay to get the ear of somebody who is asking to represent you.
Fundraising is my least favorite thing to do. First of all, I'll knock on doors and I'll talk to people, but it's not my favorite thing to do. And you really bring up a good point that the money in politics is crazy, and it makes it hard for the average Joe or Jane to run for office. So I thought that was a really great perspective.
My first thing that I really thought this is a broken system, like I was really experiencing it for my campaign, was we had donations come in and I was calling everybody, thanking them. I was like, thank you so much. And it became quite a bit. It was hard to keep head up. But when you give to a candidate, you give your name, your occupation. It's all stuff that has to be filed. And I'll never forget, we had, for some reason, like over a day or two, a lot of people gave like $100, $200, and their occupation, they were on disability. They were on SSDI benefits. And I've helped people get that. I know that they don't get a lot of money. And, some people giving $250, that's sometimes over 10% of what they get every month, and they have nothing else. And, it wasn't necessarily someone that was on my team, but other people who I guess were wanting to come on and, they were trying to give me ideas on how we could raise more money and they could, be a part of that. They were like, oh, you need to call those people and ask for more money. And I go, what? They're like, yeah, call them, say thank you, but remind them they can give you up to $3,500 for a primary. I'm like, no, these people are on fixed income. I'm not. I want to give them their money back. I don't want to ask them for more money. Are you kidding me? It was grotesque. It was gross. And I wish, I wish every day that I've been doing this, that was not part of this. Because I'm not doing that.
Well, I was going to ask, the last question I had was, what's the one message that you want voters to take away from the conversation? I think you've answered it in that you really are a man of the people or a person that part of the community, and you want to try to maintain that identity and that piece of the community, even if you are elected to the Senate, try to not lose those roots. I mean, that's kind of what I'm pulling from that. And it's refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if we pull this off and we, flip this seat and I'm the next senator, my promise to people, and I know this is easier said now than I guess executed in the future, but I will be available to everybody. I will show up. All the days I don't have to be in D.C., I will be back in Kentucky. I do not like D.C. I would rather not be there that much, but I'll do it for the job. But all the other days, I'll be here and I'll be available for everybody. And, I will always be within reach.
That's fantastic.
That is. I had reached out to Thomas Massey, and asked to see if during the recess if he was going to be doing in town halls, and no. And I'm just like, but that's your job. Like you said, these people, you got one job. You got one job.
Yeah.
But look, before you go, we do a little lightning round with all of our guests just to get to know you a little bit better. We ask 5 rapid fire questions. If you're up for that, all right. Yeah. This was a little difficult. Give us one word that describes your leadership style.
Ooh, I'm very, very adaptable. I think you have to be adaptable to be a good leader.
Yeah, that is great.
It's good.
All right. If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
That one is very easy. It is the soft shell tacos from Taco John's.
Oh.
Yeah, you guys might be Taco Bell people. I don't know where you're at,
we
but
don't have
Taco John's
here. Yeah.
Yeah, it was big in West Kentucky, and we finally have one in the Lexington area. It's my favorite, I guess, food in general, because I grew up, very poor. We didn't go to too many sit-down restaurants. It's kind of like Taco Bell, but better.
I'll have to check that out.
I'll have to check that out when I'm in Lexington the next time.
Yeah.
All right, number 3. What is the coolest thing you did as a Secret Service agent?
Ooh.
I know that might be hard because you probably did.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's all, I guess, relative. I guess from where I grew up, and I never had opportunities for anything. I saw the whole world with that job, which was, something that I never thought I'd get to do. I can say this. I guess this isn't really one specific thing. Before I got on the job, there were a few, we can all look it up on Google and in the history books, but some presidents were unfortunately shot. And then after I left, the president was shot. But the whole time I was there, no presidents were shot. So I'm not going to say that that was just my doing, but nobody was shot when I was there. So I think that's a pretty good...
it's a fact.
A good, that's I think it was probably because of me.
You're not lying. That is a fact. For sure. All right. Yeah. Okay. Kind of like the opposite of that. You said you got to see the whole world. Well, when you go back to your hometown, what's the first place you go to? Where's your favorite place?
Okay. Yeah. Lyon County, go to a little city called Koehl, and all the locals, they call it the Cliffs. And it's, it overlooks the Lake Barkley down there. And it's just a little walking trail, very, very short. But I go there every time I'm down there, and I can just sit there for hours. It's beautiful, and it's where I went to growing up. Anytime, I needed to just be alone or do homework or anything, I was always there, and I go there every time I'm down there.
Yes, there's so many beautiful parts of Kentucky. We're so lucky.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
And then lastly, I don't know, I guess different people in your household may answer this one differently, but who has more say around the house, you or your golden doodle, Rocky? I saw the cat come into frame, so that may be.
Yeah. So the cats are the bossiest of all living things here. We have 2 cats, Luna and Ruby. Rocky has been part of the family for many years now, but we actually, right at Thanksgiving, Rocky got a sister. Her name is Lady, and she is a setter doodle mix. She's a rescue. There's a really great organization here in Lexington, Paws for the Cause, I believe is what it's called. And they rescued a whole family. And she is big and goofy, and she's still a puppy, but she's really good. We have a zoo now. We have 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 kids. So too many of everything.
It's awesome. Is that a setter doodle? Does she have red curly hair?
She does. So she just walked by. I was going to try to get her. She doesn't get out. Let me pull up a picture. So when we got her, this is me. She was terrified of doorways. So she wouldn't walk out to the car. So that's me carrying her to the car when we adopted her. And she was terrified. But then it was funny. I kept trying to talk to her when I was driving. She was giving me this little side eye. She did not trust me at all. But now she's great. Yeah, she's beautiful. She's a really good girl, and we're lucky to have her.
You have similar shade of hair. So
we do. That was my only criteria. I was like, I can't be the only ginger in the house anymore. So we have to get something else.
Good
we
call.
Will be represented. Yes.
Well, Logan, we sure appreciate your time and talking to you. It was a lot of fun, as well as informative. And, we thank you for sharing your story and your vision. And so where can listeners learn more about your campaign and make sure not to donate any money?
Yeah, go to loganforsythe.com. Check out the social medias. I didn't have social media before this, so I'm still learning it. But sometimes I interact with people in the comments. One guy, unfortunately, my wife blocked him, which is really upsetting. He was my favorite guy. No matter what I posted on Facebook, this sweet old man, someone's grandfather, I can't think of his name, which is probably good, but I would post hey, happy Thanksgiving, just something not even political, and he would just put F you, just spell it out under every single post. And that's honestly that is the greatest use of Facebook. He was my favorite guy, but
yeah.
it would spark fights. Other people would like be nice and defend me. So I was like, he has to go. So if that guy, I forget your name, I'm so sorry. If you're listening, I miss you. My wife wasn't a fan though, but I'm sorry. You make another profile, do it again.
Good story. Well, yeah, thanks, Logan. We appreciate you stopping by.
Right. Sounds good. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Logan. Take care.
Take care.
All right.
You all too. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's it for this candidate interview edition. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcasts or exclusive material. And don't forget, you can join the conversation at our Facebook and Instagram pages or at blue.podcast.com. And if you like listening, please consider donating to help fund us, which you can do by clicking on the donate link at blue.podcast.com. Until next time, stay curious, keep the facts in focus, and never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.